Namo Namaha Bhaktam Sarvesham Hardam Swagatam. Welcome back to this channel Sanskrit Sopanam. I hope you are doing great. I'm also good. And in our journey of learning Sanskrit through Gita, today we have arrived at a very important point. The reason I say so is, from this shloka onwards, we are diving into the pure philosophical side of Bhagavad Gita. And the reason is, we all are aware that Bhagavad Gita is like a essence of all the Upanishads. Okay. And Upanishads, they deal with the transcendental knowledge. That is the knowledge of the true nature of things. That is the true nature of self, the true nature of reality, the true nature of God. So it deals with all this knowledge. And Bhagavad Gita, since this is an essence of all the Upanishads, it picks up on the same themes. Now the question is, why this knowledge is important for me? Because I do not aim to become a rishi. I do not aim to become a sadhu. So why this knowledge is important to me? The reason is, when we know the true nature of reality, and the reality is not just limited to the outside external world that we perceive with our sense organs. The reality is much deeper, it is much bigger than we realize, and that entire reality affects us, either we accept it or not. So, when we understand the true nature of this reality, we become so much more equipped for handling any situation, any circumstance that we face in the outside world also. So, for both the outside world and the internal world, this knowledge is extremely important. And by outside world, what do I mean? Is the stress of job, the stress of maintaining relationships with other people, or some unforeseen stress that we have to face in this outside world. The internal, so that is our own thoughts, that is our own ideas, our own fears, our own insecurities. So all these troubles, when we know the true nature of things, we become so much better equipped for handling these things. So that is the practical benefit of all these things. But there is also a spiritual side to it. And that spiritual side is, by knowing the true nature of things, we can uplift our basic nature to a higher nature. What we say is a spiritual upliftment. So for both the practical and the spiritual benefits, this knowledge of self, this knowledge of reality is extremely important. But Bhagavad Gita understands that the philosophy or the knowledge, if only given as such, without giving any techniques, any practical ways that you can imbibe and you can follow that knowledge, is not much useful. It is basically useless. So Bhagavad Gita also gives us different ways that we say, no, different yoga systems like Bhakti Yoga. For those who are more of a emotional side, they have an emotional temperament. So for them, the Bhakti Yoga, the path of devotion, is much suited. Then for those who are intellectually very active, so for them, the Jnana Yoga, the path of knowledge. For those who are practically oriented, they want to perform. So for them, the Karma Yoga, the path of action. As such, there are different ways that Bhagavad Gita gives us. So it also gives us the knowledge, it also gives us the technique, the practical techniques through which we can imbibe that knowledge, we can follow that knowledge to improve us and to uplift ourselves, both in the practical world and in the spiritual world. And now, this particular chapter, the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, why this is so important is because this chapter is like a summary of all the different themes, of all the different yoga systems that Krishna is going to touch up throughout the Bhagavad Gita. So this giving summary in the start, this seemed like a pattern in ancient scriptures, because if you read Ramayana also, so in the very start you have an entire short summary of the entire Ramayana. So it seemed like a pattern. The same pattern is followed here. That is why this particular chapter, the Samkhya Yoga, the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, is so important. Because by reading just this chapter, you get an entirety of an idea that all the different themes, all the different systems that Krishna is going to teach you, teach Arjuna. From Arjuna, we are going to learn. Everything is here in this particular chapter. So that is the importance of this chapter. And having said this, I know the main aim of this series is learning Sanskrit through Gita Shlokas. That we are understanding different grammatical concepts of Sanskrit language. We are understanding it and we are applying it by decoding the shlokas. So we are learning it and we are exercising it. So that is the main aim that is there. But if we are only learning Sanskrit, if we are only using Gita Shlokas, Gita verses to train our Sanskrit, then it is like a missed opportunity. It is like taking a spoonful of water out of an entire ocean. So, to avoid that blunder, I request all of you that from this shloka, from this point onwards, complement this Sanskrit learning with a commentary, with the bhashya on these Gita verses, so that you can understand the deeper philosophical and spiritual meaning of these Gita verses, because they are very deep and they are very important. So learning Sanskrit through them, through these videos is fine, but please accompany these Gita shlokas with a commentary or a bhashya on them. And I personally follow, as I've mentioned before also, Swami Chinmayananda's commentary on Bhagavad Gita. But there are so many different gurus, so many different acharyas that have done excellent work in providing the commentary on Bhagavad Gita. You can try some of them and you can stick with the one that relates the most to you. But the point is, please accompany, please complement this learning of Bhagavad Gita verses with the understanding, the proper understanding of the proper implication of these verses. Each verse gives a lot of information, lot of knowledge. So and that can only be understood by reading a commentary bhashya on them. So please do that. And lastly, when I'm decoding these Gita verses through the lens of Sanskrit grammar and vocabulary, so while doing this, I have to give some explanation and some context of the Gita verses also. That is unavoidable. So when I'm doing that, please know that all these explanations, all these philosophical and spiritual explanations that I'm trying to give here, that is coming from reading a commentary on them. So that is not my own opinion. I am learning from the gurus, I am learning from their commentaries. That is what I'm giving you, whatever explanation, whatever context I'm giving here. So please make sure of that. Whatever useful thing, whatever useful or beneficial thing that is coming out from these explanations, that I owe to all these gurus, all these great gurus and their commentary. And if any explanation that I give feels insufficient or it feels it doesn't feel right, so think that that is just my own limitation. That is just my own limitation, my own limited understanding of these things. So that is just what I wanted to clear, that any philosophical spiritual concept that I'm talking about here, I'm referring to here, so that is all coming from the commentaries I'm reading. And if there is any problem, if there is any deficiency, insufficient explanation, that is just owing to my own limitation. Okay, that is not reflective of Bhagavad Gita or of the excellent commentaries on them. So that is just my own limitation. Having said all of this, let us start decoding the shloka. Okay, so starting with the 11th shloka, this shloka and all the shloka onwards, these are being said by Shri Krishna. That is why Shri Bhagavana Uvacha, referring to Shri Krishna. Okay, so let me go through the shloka once. Ashocyananvashocastvam prajnavadanscha bhashase gatasuna gatasunschya nanushocanti panditaha. Okay, so this is the shloka in hand, and this here is the Sandhi Vichhed version of the shloka. So as you can see, there is one sandhi, that is Sattva sandhi, Sakara sandhi, that is happening here, Anvashochastvam, and then you have a similar kind of sandhi that is happening here and here as well. So this sandhi is actually an outcome of multiple steps of different sandhis. But what in end we get is, when after a nakara, you have either a chakara or you have a chakara. Okay, so when after this nakara, you have either this cha or cha. So instead of this nakara, you get a anuswara with a shakara, this. Okay, so this nakara is replaced with this combination. That is what is happening here. So prajna vadanscha and agata sunscha. That is what is reflective in the shloka. Okay, and again, all this sandhi, everything is given in the PDF file as usual. You can download the PDF from the link in the description box. Okay, so you can refer to that PDF later in your own time. Let us start decoding the shloka now. And we are starting with this dhatu roop anvashochaha. Okay, so I have taken this karta, this thing along with this dhatu roop only. I could have broken that anvashochaha, grieved, then kaha anvashochaha. I could have done that also. Here I am taking along with the karta. So tvam anvashochaha simply means you grieved. Okay, this anvashochaha, this dhatu roop, this is coming from shuch dhatu. This dhatu, that means, of course, to grieve or to lament, to feel sorrow. In all those sense, this shuch dhatu is used. And this shuch dhatu in second person, that is madhyama purush. Why? Because Krishna is directly talking to Arjuna. He is talking about him. So second person, that is madhyama purush, singular, and past tense, that is lang lakar in Sanskrit. So in these three properties, this shuch, it changes into this ashochaha. Okay, so Krishna is saying to Arjuna that tvam ashochaha, you grieved. Okay, action done in the past. And here, looking at this form, you can identify that there is also a prefix, that is anu. So when this anu prefix attaches with this dhatu roop ashochaha, due to the sandhi that is happening between this u of the anu and a of this ashochaha, you get this word anvashochaha. Okay, you can identify this sandhi, right? This sandhi is a yana sandhi. That is when after an u there is a a. So this u is replaced with this vakara, this va. That is what is happening here. Anushochaha, anvashochaha. Okay, so that is how we get this form anvashochaha. Tvam, you all know that this is coming from the pronoun yushmat. And this pronoun, this refers to everything related to the second person. So from this yushmat only, we are getting this form tvam. Tvam, that is the prathama vibhakti ekvachan, that is the first word case singular form that translates to you. Okay, so tvam anvashochaha simply means you grieved. That Krishna is saying to Arjuna that you grieved. Okay, and if we'll move on, so the obvious question is the object, trying to find the object of the action. That Arjuna grieved, whom did he grieve? So that is why I'm asking Kan, that Kan anvashochaha. And the response is tvam ashocyan anvashochaha. This ashocyan, this refers to those who should not be grieved for. Okay, and just by the looks of it, you can guess that this ashochan, this noun form, should be coming from this same dhatu from which this dhatu roop has come, anvashochaha, because shocha, both of them carry the same sound. And that is true because this ashochan, this is coming from the dhatu shuch. This dhatu, when modified using this suffix, nyat suffix, this changes into this pratipadika shochya. Okay, and shochya, this refers to anyone who should be grieved for. Okay, so the task should be done in that sense. And this nyat suffix, I think this is the first time you may be encountering this suffix. And there are two very similar kind of suffix we have already seen. That is this anir suffix and this tavyat suffix. Both these suffix, they also do the same thing, that they change the meaning into the action should be done. Okay, so I could have used these suffixes also with this dhatu because the same meaning would have been implied. So if shuch dhatu would have been modified using anir suffix, then we would have got this form shochniya. And shochniya, this pratipadik will also describe anything that should be grieved for. And the same would have been the case with this tavyat suffix also. That if shuch would have been modified with this tavyat suffix instead, then we would have gotten this form shochitavya. Okay, again implying the same meaning, something that should be, something or someone that should be grieved for in that sense. So all these three suffixes, anir, tavyat and nyat, all these three suffixes do the same thing. These forms also, shochniya, shochitavya and shochya, all implying the same meaning. Okay, so I hope the function of this nyat suffix, this is clear. But then afterwards, with this shochya, this pratipadika, what we are doing is we are adding a because we are trying to negate it. So we know to negate it, we can add this a. The pratipadika becomes ashochya. The meaning is entirely negated, one who should not be grieved for. And now this pratipadika is an object, is a karma of this action. Okay, you grieved whom? So you grieved these people. So since this pratipadika is a karma of this action, so this is obviously assuming the second case, that is the dvitiya vibhakti, and talking about multiple people, so plural. So this pratipadika ashochya in second case plural changes into this form ashocyan. So tvam ashocyan anvashochaha, that you have grieved, you grieved for those who should not be grieved for. So this is the statement. I hope this word is clear. And now we have this cha bhashase. So basically we have another dhatu roop, bhashase. Bhashase means you articulate or you speak. So in both these senses we can use this dhatu roop, because this is coming from the dhatu bhash, and bhash dhatu again means both the things, to articulate or to speak. Okay, the form here is again Krishna talking about Arjuna. So second person, that is Madhyama Purush, singular ekvachana. The only difference is the lakar. So here this form bhashase is in present tense, that is lat lakar in Sanskrit. That is why I write you articulate or you speak. It is present tense. Okay, so this is some action that Krishna is referring he did in the past. And this is some action that is referring to just like a current situation, a current scenario. Okay, in that sense. And this cha, this avyay generally translates as and. Okay, simple and. But within the context of the shloka, the better translation is and yet. Because Krishna is trying to show a contrast between his past action and his present action. So that contrast, to show that, I am using this and yet. Okay, when we decode the shloka fully, you will understand it. So let's move on. And again, I am trying to inquire about the karma, the object of the action. That Arjuna bhashase, that he speak. But what do he speak? And that is this prajna vadan. That tvam prajna vadan bhashase. You articulate wise statements or you speak words of wisdom. So this prajna vadan, let us understand this word. So this prajna, this refers to wisdom. Okay, so this is the meaning of this pratipadika. Vada, this refers to a statement that is made by someone or a speech that is given by someone or simply the words that someone speaks. So in that sense, this vada is used. So combining them together, prajnavad, this simply means a wise statement or the words of wisdom. So in that sense, and again, since this is also the object of this action, bhashase, so this also is in the second case. That is the dvitiya vibhakti and again plural. Because talking about different statements he made, multiple words that he spoke. So plural. So prajnavada in second case plural changes into prajnavadan. Just as this ashochya changed into ashochyan. Both of them akarant pratipadika. So they get this form ashochyan and prajnavadan. Okay, I hope this is clear. So this entire first line of the verse, with this Krishna is telling Arjuna that tvam ashochyan anvashochaha, that you grieved, you lamented for those who should not be grieved for. And yet, cha, and yet you articulate wise statements, that you speak wise words. So that is what Krishna is telling Arjuna. This tvam, so it is not that this tvam is twice. This is only used once in the verse. I am just repeating here because we know this is implied. Both of these statements being said for Arjuna. So that is why I've repeated it. Okay, and with this statement, Krishna is telling Arjuna what we just saw in the previous chapter also, in the previous shlokas also, that by up till this point, Arjuna, he was feeling sorrowful. He lamented his teachers, Drona and Bhishma. He grieved for his relatives in the Kaurava side. He also lamented for his own people in the Pandava side, that fighting this war, they are going to lose their life and everything. So he was sorrowful for them. So that is what Krishna is pointing, that you have grieved for all these people, and yet the reasons that you give, yet the statements that you make, the words that you use, it seems like some wise person is saying, but your words does not match your action. That is why this and yet, cha is translating into and yet, to show that contradiction. Krishna is trying to point out that what you speak, your words, does not match your actions. Okay, and Krishna, why he is labeling these people as Ashochya? Ashochya is someone who is not worthy of being grieved for, or who should not be grieved for. So the reason he is giving this label Ashochya is not because they are their opponent, that they are in their opposite side, or they have chosen the path of adharma, they have chosen the side of adharma. That is why they are Ashochya. It is not the reason, but that reason is something else. But first, let us understand the second line also. Let us decode the second line also. And now we have this dhatu roop anushochanti. So you can clearly see that again this is coming from the same shuch dhatu. The only difference is this is a more familiar form, shochanti. So patati patataha pathanti, shochati shochataha shochanti. So we already know that this shuch dhatu is in third person, plural, bahuvachan, and normal present tense, lat lakar and Sanskrit. Changing into shochanti, again anu is just the prefix, upsarg here. So anu shochanti, saying that they, because the third person plural, so they do not grieve. Okay, this not, this negation is coming from this na that is preceding it. So anushoshanti would have been they grieve, but na anushoshanti, so they do not grieve. So that is the full meaning of this dhatu roop. Okay, so that is what Krishna is saying, but they do not grieve. So who are they? Kaha anushochanti. The response we get is panditaha na anushochanti. And panditaha, this of course is coming from the pratipadika pandita. This is just the Prathama Vibhakti, that is the first case and plural form. Okay, Ram, Ramo, Ramaha. So same thing, to show the karta of this kriya, Panditaha na anushochanti. And Pandita means wise person. Someone who have prajna in them, someone who have wisdom in them. So wise person. Panditaha, of course plural, so wise people. So that is what Krishna is saying. Panditaha na anushochanti. That the wise people of this world, they do not grieve. But whom they do not grieve? So kana na anushochanti. So that is Gatasoon agatasoon cha na anushochanti. This cha again is just dividing these two words with this and. Okay, Gatasoon and agatasoon na anushochanti. That is the response. Gatasoon, this means the dead, the person who is dead. Agatasoon is person who is still living. Okay, but let us understand these words. So gata, this pratipadika, this means departed, something that is departed or something that is gone. And asu, this means breath. This means breath, the vital air, the prana, or the life. And this gatasoon, this is coming from the pratipadika gatasu. Okay, so why we are getting this pratipadika is because I want to say gataha asuhu yasmat. Yasmat is one from whom. Okay, so one from whom, asuhu, the life or the breath, gataha, has departed, has gone. So gataha asuhu yasmat, one from within whom the breath, the vital air, the life force has departed. Saha gatasu. Okay, because again when we combine the words, we combine them in their pratipadika form. So this gata plus asu, due to dirgha sandhi, it becomes this gatasu. Okay, so this is how this samasa, this pratipadika can be interpreted. Gatasu essentially means the one from whom the vital air, the life force has departed. So essentially it means someone who is dead, right? And since this pratipadika gatasu here is being used as an karma, because anushochanti, na anushochanti, they do not grieve whom. So since this is the object, the karma of this action, anushochanti, so of course this is also in second case and talking about multiple people, so plural. So ukarant pratipadika gatasu changes into gatasoon. Okay, just as guru changes into guruun. So in that sense only. So the wise people, they do not grieve the dead, and cha, the living. So how we are getting this living? So again, just adding this a to negate the meaning, to reverse the meaning. So agatasu, one who is not dead. So one who is living in that sense. And then of course agatasu also agatasun in its second vibhakti plural form. So I hope both these words are clear. The entire statement is Panditaha gatasun agatasun cha na anushochanti. That the wise people of this world, they do not grieve either the dead or the living, that they do not grieve either of them. And with this, what Krishna said earlier for Arjuna, that you speak words of wisdom and yet you grieved, you lamented those who should not be grieved. So all those on the Kaurava side or on the Pandava side whom Arjuna is going to fight, for them Krishna is saying they should not be grieved for. And then he is supporting this statement by saying that Panditaha na anushuchanti, that wise people of the world, they do not grieve either the dead or the living. And the reason Krishna is saying so, because he is hinting that there is a greater self than just this gross form, just this physical body. There is a self that is greater than that. He is hinting at that idea to Arjuna, that there are different levels of personality, or there are different levels of reality within each of us. And that reality can be subdivided as the physical reality that we perceive with our physical sense, the reality of the external world, the forms, that all. So that is the physical reality. Then you have the emotional side of things. That is due to our mind. That is the mental level, the mental reality. Then you have the intellectual reality due to our intellect. And then the fourth, you have the that transcendental state. So he's referring to all these different states, because suppose you see a person standing in front of you. Now that person as set standards can be considered as unattractive. So suppose he is unattractive, he is ugly looking, untidy, ugly. So when you see him, so you will feel a disgust. You will get this feeling of disgust towards him. That is why, because you are only judging that person from that physical level. But if you move one step up and you start to judge him from a mental level, so suppose that same person is your brother or he is your father, so you have an emotional connect with him. So the moment you have an emotional connect with him, that is to say, the moment you start to perceive that thing, that object, that person from a level that is not just physical but a mental level, a higher level, then all those imperfections, all those untidiness, ugliness, it won't bother you, because he can be ugly for rest of the world, but if you have emotional connect with him, then that ugliness won't matter to you, it won't bother you. So obviously we see this in the practical life only, that the moment we perceive things from a higher level, so we get rid of some sort of sorrow. And now suppose that same person, he is not your father or your brother, but rather some person with whom you recently had a fight, you quarreled with that person. So on a physical level, he is causing you sorrow, but now on an emotional level also he is causing you sorrow, because on seeing him you are feeling all these negative feelings of anger, hatred. So on an emotional level also he is causing you sorrow. But then again, if you can connect with that person on a another higher level, that is the intellectual level. In our intellect level, we have all these ideologies, all these philosophies, all these bigger plans, right? Intellect is what sees these things, that okay, even though this person is very rude to talk to, but since he is a part of our team and since the completion of the project is very necessary, so okay, let's bear with him. So that is to say that if you can connect with a higher goal, that is an intellectual goal, so if you can have an intellect connect with him, then also you will bear that person, then also that person will not cause so much sorrow to you. So that again goes to see, okay, from physical level, if you rise up in the mental level, some sorts of sorrow, they die down. From that mental level also, if you rise up and you start to see things from an intellect level, then a lot of sorrows die down. So that is to say that with each different reality, as we keep on rising up, these sorrows, all these negative feelings, they start to subdue, because you start to get a bigger and bigger picture of all these things. And that is what exactly Krishna is trying to tell Arjuna, that Arjuna, you are seeing those Bhishma Pitama, Dronacharya as your teacher, because you have a emotional connect with them, you have an intellect connect with them, so you are seeing them as that. But if you can rise above and you can see from that level, then you can see that within each of them there is a self that is greater than all these three levels, all these physical, mental and intellect. There is a self, there is a atma that is indestructible. So even if they are dead, that does not mean that is the end of it. And that is the second point Krishna is trying to make here, that this death, what we say death, it is not death, it is a change. Because when a system is finite, when there is a finitude in the system, then change is the only constant. So in simple terms, for something that is finite, change is the only constant. And this change is often termed as death. Because when from a cocoon the caterpillar emerges, so that is the death of that cocoon. But do we perceive it as death? No, we perceive it as a change. From that cocoon the caterpillar came. Same goes for the seeds. When we grow sprouts, so from that seed the sprout, it bursts open. The seed bursts open, the sprout emerges. So is that the death of the seed? No, it is just a change. And actually this same concept applies to the Lord Shiva also, that we say Lord Shiva, he is the destroyer. But he is not the destroyer in the sense of destroying things abruptly, that he just comes and destroys. No, that destruction is the change. That destruction is the bringing forth of a new change. So Shiva is who brings the change. So in that sense, he is a destroyer. So that is what he is referring to here. That what Arjuna you are considering as a death, it is not a death. It is just a change in this finitude system. So these 2 points Krishna is trying to tell Arjuna, that first of all, there is a self that is greater than physical, mental, and intellect personality. There is some greater self, and that self is indestructible. And even though this is a death of the physical existence, but this death is again just a change in this system. So this perception Krishna is trying to tell Arjuna, and that is why he is saying that wise people, they do not grieve either the dead or the living. Because if you realize this, then what is the point of grieving for them? Okay, so this is what he is referring to, Krishna, when he is saying that all those people are ashochya, or the panditaha, the wise people, they na anushochanti, they do not grieve. This is what he means. But anyways, we have completed the understanding, the decoding of the shloka. Let us check the translation along with the anvaya. So Krishna addresses Arjuna and says that you grieved tvam anvashochaha ashocyan. You grieved over those who should not be grieved for. And cha, and yet, because to point out the irony in the contradiction between the words and the actions of Arjuna, to point out that irony, he is saying, and yet tvam bhashase pranyavadan, that you articulate wise statements and speak wise words. That is to say that Arjuna, you speak like wise person, but you don't act like one. So that is what Krishna means with this statement. And then he further continues and says, panditaha na anushochanti, that the wise people, they na anushochanti, they do not grieve. And whom they do not grieve? So gatasun cha agatasun, that they do not grieve either the dead or the living. That those who are dead or those who are still living, the wise people, they do not grieve either of them. Okay, so that was the entire decoding of the shloka. I hope all the words, grammatically and vocabulary, all the words were clear. And with the shloka, actually, you can see that Krishna, he is directly bringing in with some heavy stuff to Arjuna, and that is exactly what Sri Chinmayananda ji, he also points out in his commentary, that this opening dialogue is like a shock to Arjuna, that all of a sudden Krishna is unpacking this great transcendental truth to Arjuna, that think of a higher self, think of the nature of the death, all these concepts. But again, throughout Bhagavad Gita, we will see this thing, that the structure of Bhagavad Gita, that why they are bringing this concept here, why they are taking this concept there. This is for Shri Krishna, who is the divine himself, and Ved Vyasa, who is the greatest of the mind, greatest of the sage. So it is for them to decide. Our limited intellect, our limited understanding, it cannot fathom their methodology. So we can just trust the process, we can trust them, because only when we surrender to these things, we become truly receptive of this higher knowledge without any prejudice, without any mental conditioning. So that is the correct way of receiving this higher knowledge. So trust the process, trust Shri Krishna, trust Ved Vyasa, who are bringing this knowledge to us. So that is it. I hope you enjoyed the entire session. Everything was clear. I'll meet you in the next video with another shloka. Until then, stay awesome, stay happy. Vayam punah milamaha. धन्यवाद.